Okay, hello everyone. I am lighting up green, so I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. I am going to spend the next couple of minutes just letting people in through the waiting room. So, okay, good. You can hear me. That's amazing. I'm really glad. I have hosted like writing workshops in the past with a half dozen participants, but I've never done a live stream like this, so I'm kind of nervous, but I'm sure it will go fine. Let's see. We'll just chill for a couple of minutes. Thank you, Harper. I appreciate the support and encouragement and compliments. My goodness, thank you for being up and ready. It's 6 a.m. Couldn't be me. I'm so sorry. I'm not a morning person at all. Can I just double check if the captions are working? Because I can see them, but I'm not sure if everyone else can. Okay. I don't know if the captions will show up for everyone, which is kind of a shame, but I think they'll show up in the recording. So we have that at least. Okay. Okay, I'll just give it another 2 minutes because people are trickling in one at a time, and then I think we can get started.
Natalie says she's having trouble getting the Zoom link to work. I'm gonna I'm gonna message her really quick and or message them and see if just tell them to try and rejoin. Okay.
Thank you. I don't have a notification that she's requested to join yet, so
I think we need a technology witch that would make everything much easier, huh? Just a little bit of magic.
yes, oh my God. I've never had whatever this version of Zoom is, like with the extra features. I managed to get
Yeah.
a free trial, so I didn't actually have to pay for this, but there are so many more buttons than I'm used to, and I'm so scared I'm gonna
Oh
click
no.
something and everyone will just like disappear.
I get that. I had apparently an older version of Zoom downloaded, so I was like, okay, everything's tested. I'm ready. And then it's like, okay, would you like to now download the new version? No, I would like to just join. It's 1 minute. But yeah.
I'm wondering, do I need to send Natalie a email invite maybe?
Yeah, Natalie said it says the meeting ID is invalid. Did it change again? And I said to try and rejoin. The link from the email and Ella should be the right one. So, and then I haven't heard back yet, so maybe they will appear.
Okay, I'll just see if I can do that. Um, Send this. Okay, I've sent that, so hopefully we will see.
I just realized my background is actually also Artifice and Access colored. So apparently I stole the cover for my wallpaper.
Also, I want to see your what's it called? Dungarees overalls, pinafore
Ah, yes, yes. So they're they're also
straps.
kind of turquoisey. Yeah.
I love them.
Thank you. I I feel like these could almost be blackberries from like my story, but it's got this like weird little purpley thing. So we're almost on brand.
Okay, I think Natalie has arrived. I see Natalie's name. Okay, shall we get started then? I'm just gonna wing this, guys. Cool. Okay, we just get booted up. Okay, hello everyone, first of all. I don't know if everyone heard me say this, but this is my first time like hosting a live stream, so please bear with me if I am a silly goose and I goof anything up. But first of all, I just wanted to start off the stream by saying thank you. Like from the bottom of my heart, genuinely, thank you for being here with all of us tonight slash today, depending on what time of the day you're currently sitting in. 6 a.m. is far too early to be awake, so I commend anyone who is awake that early to be here. But thank you for joining the stream to celebrate the launch of Artifice and Access, the Disability in Fantasy anthology. I really, really can't articulate how grateful I am for all of the support and the willingness to show up to and spend time with us here today. Like that's bananas to me. Your time is incredibly important, and my heart is extremely warm right now. So, as promised, as part of this live stream, you will be given access to a free printable bookmark design. So there are actually two, and they are based on the cover, but I fiddled with the colors and had a little bit of fun. So that's an exclusive thing that you guys will get. And you will also get a free bonus short story that could have been part of the anthology. It's very on theme, obviously. Otherwise, I mean, I would hate to give you a short story that has nothing to do with the anthology at all. I feel like that would be weird, but maybe I would have done it as a bit. Anyway, so I will post the link to those like free things in the chat in a minute. I have to balance like all of the things right now. And if you can't access it through there, then just feel free to reach out to me literally anywhere I can be reached out on, whether it's Twitter, Blue Sky, my website. If you have my email address, go ahead, and I will try and forward that to you. So the plan for the stream, just so we're all on the same page, is as follows. It is currently set to go for an hour. Step one is introduction. So my wonderful authors will get to say a little bit about themselves, introduce talk about some of their work, et cetera, maybe share a couple of fun facts. Step two, I have prepared a couple of questions to ask the authors. So it's going to be a general Q&A. And then if anyone tuning in would like to also ask some questions, then please feel free to drop the questions in the chat. Or alternatively, I think there is a way to, there's a button somewhere that can like put a hand up. And I should be able to see that, and then I can call on you. And if you would prefer to talk over the microphone, then that we can do that as well. Then step three, or the third part of this live stream, is the discussion time. So that is where we are going to have a really fun and amazing and deep and meaningful conversation about the importance of disability representation in the fantasy genre and all things related to that. And again, if you have anything to add or ask, please don't hesitate to drop it in the chat, or like I said, press that hand button, which is somewhere. I really wish I were more Zoom savvy right now, but we're rolling with it. So the last thing I wanted to say is that I think everyone is muted, which is really, really great. That will really help the captioning thing that I have turned on be able to distinguish the audio, so long as like people aren't sort of having cross, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to say cross-contaminated, but I feel like you know what I mean, where there's multiple sounds going on all the time. Okay, so with all of that housekeeping out of the way, I'll just begin with my brief introduction, I guess, and a brief appearance description as well. So, hello, my name is Ella T. Holmes. My pronouns are she, her, and I have ginger colored hair. It is bob length, and I'm wearing a white short sleeve top under a blue plaid pinafore dress. I thought it would be nice to dress up for the event. I am the compiler, editor, and illustrator of Artifice Access. I have short fiction works and essays published in a dozen journals and magazines, mostly in the fantasy and speculative space. And when I'm not writing, I'm usually doing some form of disability advocacy in my community, either in community spaces with other people or just on my own being a bit obnoxious. And I am currently doing disability studies research, but I'm not at university anymore. So I'm kind of just being obnoxious about that as well and asking people to send me papers and things. Fun facts about me, I don't know. I'm afraid of bush turkeys, which we have quite a few of here in Queensland where I live, and they are terrifying. One of them followed me home once, and I've never been the same. It was friendly, I think, but you know, it's that kind of thing is you don't expect that. My second fun fact, let's see. I should have prepared for this. I can make a really good finger handgun with one hand. The other one is like I really don't know what's going on there. And then the third fun fact is that I don't know, I'm really trying hard to write a novel and I don't know how it's going, but I am making my goal to be the end of this year, finish a draft. So if anyone wants to bully me or peer pressure me about that throughout the year, I would really appreciate that. But moving on, I'm not really sure about the order that everyone is appearing on according to everyone's screens, but I'll just choose the person who looks like they're displayed next to me. So that's Casper. Casper, could you please say a little bit about yourself and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, first off, I'm happy to bully you into, lovingly bully you because I've read your novel and it's really great, and you all should be very excited. And also, real quick, like as the first author who's talking right now, thank you so much for putting this together. It's really an honor to be part of it, and yeah, has meant a lot. So yeah, hi, I'm Casper. I am an actor turned writer because I live on stories, and when I had to leave the stage behind due to disability, I needed to keep going. So I've been diving deep into storytelling. I am writing. I kind of like to dabble in everything a little bit. I have a couple of short stories. I wrote Lessons in Botany, and I have another short story in an anthology that's coming out next month. That's also about a disabled character because I want to shove that into everything now because we need more of it. And I have a poetry collection coming out in April, which is kind of about my journey of like, becoming disabled and feeling all the feels, and then looking out into the world and seeing that the world is also having, let's say, feels, or just disturbing vibes, and kind of processing all of that. I've written and self-published a novel before, but like I think I can do better than that. So I have slightly moved on, and I'm currently working on a big nonfiction book about long COVID. I feel like I'm very like on that subject, but yeah, it's been a big influence, and I feel like we need to talk more about it. So that's what I'm currently working on, and I'm hoping to write more fiction in the future as well. I live in Berlin. I lived in the States for almost 10 years, and then yeah, went back home-ish. And fun facts. So I don't know, this is a bit random, but when I was still able to like do things like ice skating, I always wanted to do ice skating and roller skating, but for some reason I can only do it with one foot. Like I tried many times, but I just go in circles. So I'm a former one-footed skater. And otherwise I played I love TTRPGs, and I played a completely cheese obsessed Victorian mouse for like a year, and it was glorious. And I consistently had to have cheese manuals open because I do not know as much as him, and I want to respect his special interests. So yeah, that's how I learned more about cheese, I suppose. Um, I think that was everything. It's really great to be here, and I'm really excited to learn more about the other authors and to have this discussion. Thank you for having me here.
Okay, I'll just choose someone, my next victim, as it were. Kara, please. I promise to be nice. Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Kara or Kara. I genuinely don't mind how people pronounce it. I respond to both, so I tell people pick whichever one you vibe with. But I'm Kara Siert. I'm from the US. I've lived all over the US, and I've actually even lived in England for 4 years, which is where everybody called me Kara. And I was like, oh, this is just my name now. All right, I love it. So it always makes me think of that when people say Kara. So that's why I genuinely don't mind it. I'm like, good memories for me. But I currently live in the Appalachian Mountains of the US. I'm the author of City of the Sun, which is the last story in the anthology. Fun fact about me, I am a toddler mom, so I am currently trying to hide all of the toddler toys from my video right now. I put up this ivy yesterday because I thought, what a fun backdrop, and I can't wait for it to get torn down. And the other fun fact about me, I never remember to drink my coffee. So if you see me drink coffee, know that it'll probably be reheated and forgotten about later today. It'll probably take me like 4 hours to drink it. But thank you everyone for being here, and huge shout out to Harper, one of the other authors in the anthology, for lovingly bullying me into submitting.
I would also just like to jump in and say thank you, Harper, for that, because I am one very happy anthology compiler. Um, okay, so next person is, I'm just going to let the anticipation hang a little, is Adie, please.
Hi, so I'm Adie Hart, and I wrote. What did I write in this one? It's called Stroke of Midnight, Shoes of Glass. I always get the things the wrong way around when I'm thinking of the title, which is a Cinderella retelling where she has chronic fatigue syndrome, which is also something that I have. Um, I'm also the co-editor of Indie Bites magazine, which is a quarterly fantasy magazine that publishes short fantasy stories from self-published, indie-published, hybrid authors. And my fun fact about me is that I may not be very coherent today because I actually went to a ball last night, like Cinderella. And writing that story has given me so much more acceptance of my own limitations, to the point where I actively thought last night, you know what? I'm not going to wear heels. I'm going to wear my support shoes, and I did, and I had a great time. So this being in this anthology has genuinely changed the way I think about my own illnesses. So I do want to say thank you to Ella for that. But I think that's probably everything interesting about me. Oh, the only other thing is that I am constantly knitting. So if you see me looking down, that's because I'm counting stitches.
Thank you for that introduction. I feel like I'm just not very natural at this. I will just say the same thing to literally everyone. So next person, my Zoom is constantly like shifting around, is Natalie, I think, please, if you wouldn't mind.
So I hope you can hear me. I've got a new microphone because my laptop is old and the microphone died. So I'm Natalie. I am originally from Denmark, but I live in Yorkshire in the UK now, and have lived here for I think 8 years, or maybe it's 9, something around that. So basically, I've managed to like just get in before Brexit. So I wrote The Changeling of Brushby, which is set in Denmark. It's set sort of around the turn of the century, like probably 1898 or something like that. And my character Tilda, she's got autism, and she's sort of struggling a lot with the expectations of what you're supposed to do. And I actually was a little bit inspired by both by my own personal experiences with autism, but also at the National Museum in Copenhagen, there's a really beautiful silk gown from that period, and I love the look of it. But just looking at the fabric, I know that I could never touch it. I would just shrivel. So that was sort of what inspired me, and then with the fairy tale twist, because I've read quite a lot of old Danish folklore. It was collected just like in the 1890s. Someone went round Denmark and collected all of them, all the stories. So I tried to sort of catch that sort of the style. So it's very different from my other writing. I've written a quite long space fantasy, dark space fantasy series. Everyone in that is queer. Everyone's dealing with mental health issues, trauma, disabilities of all sorts. So it's always been a part of my writing, I think. But it's definitely, this anthology has helped me sort of push it more to the forefront, and it sort of gave me the courage to. I'm going to publish a book in June, which is about like a chronically ill water nymph who sort of, she's coming to terms with becoming chronically ill and how that changes your life. And it can feel like it's sort of your life stops a little bit, but you have to sort of find a way forward and finding sort of the joy again, even though you can't do the things you used to, you can do other things, and sort of how to navigate all that. Fun facts about me, I have, well, he's actually maybe going to come and, you're going to come join? Yeah. I have a cat who, Barry, he is half naked at the moment because he was stupid and ate a needle a month ago, but he's all good now. It's just very expensive. So I take my cat for little walks, which in the UK, like on a harness, and in the UK that is just unheard of. It's very weird. But everyone on my road knows him, and they love like to come up and give him pets and stuff like that. Other fun facts, I actually live in a part of Yorkshire that used to be part of the Danelaw. So my Viking ancestors lived here as well 1,000 years ago. And I don't know what else. I've got loads of reptiles. I don't know if that's really a fun fact, but you can see a giant enclosure there. There's a 4-foot snake hiding in there. You won't see him, so nobody panic. But yeah, I'm sorry, Barry is destroying the microphone, so I'm going to mute myself again.
Thank you for your introduction as well. And I just need to add that I am very, very excited for your novel about the water nymph. I've been seeing all of your posts on uh Twitter, I think. That's where I've been doom scrolling lately. But I love the whole concept of that. So I'm really, really excited and happy that that is happening for you. And so, okay, so I think lastly we have Harper, if you would like to reveal yourself as the wizard behind the curtain and introduce yourself, please.
I, yes. Um, I am not gonna turn on my video because it is 6:30 in the morning. And I literally rolled out of bed, I walked into my office to be here. But I figured I would at least introduce myself. Hi, I'm Harper. I wrote One Cream, Five Sugars. Um, and um I am a part-time educator, and I also am a writer. Um, I guess just a little bit about my background. I finished my first manuscript in 2018, which will never see the light of day, but that was really what encouraged me to actually kind of like take myself seriously as a writer. And so I've been trying to get something published for a very, very long time. And then um, Ash was actually one of the people that kind of bullied me into submitting to the anthology. We are in Discord together, and a mutual friend of ours posted Ella's call for stories, and Ash said something along the lines of, "Oh, I don't know, I'd like to submit, but I'm kind of scared." And I said, "Well, I'll do it if you do it. I dare you." And then I told Kara, I was like, "Hey, you should do this with me. We should do it together. And if we don't get in, we can be sad together." Um, but it all worked out super well, and all three of us ended up getting accepted. And it's been just an absolute pleasure. I was super excited. My story is about a character with Marfan syndrome, which is a rare genetic disorder that I have lived with my entire life, but I didn't know I had it until I was 14, because it is so rare and so just not talked about. And so with my story, I really wanted to raise awareness for Marfan syndrome, and just kind of bring some more attention to that. Fun fact, my cat is currently trying to knock everything off my desk. I am a Lego ADHDer. I have an unfinished Lego on my desk, which is what my cat is trying to knock over. Um, I have a manuscript, I have a novel currently in the works that I'm going to be doing edits for this summer. Novel will be coming out next year. Um, so I'm working on that. Um, that's all I got at 6 in the morning. Oh, I also like TTRPGs. I'm a forever DM. Um, also avid board game collector. Last night we tried to play Arkham Horror for the first time, and promptly gave up. So if anybody knows how to play that, please message me after the Zoom meeting. We need help. Okay, there we go. That's it.
Amazing. Thank you, Harper, for managing to string together whole entire sentences that early in the morning. Um, I really appreciate you doing that for us today. Well, tonight for me. I feel like we're at opposite ends. I'm really late tonight and you're really early in the morning. So now that we have done all of the introductions, we can move on to part two, as it were, which is the Q&A segment. So I have prepared a couple of questions to ask that anyone can answer. So if anyone wants to like say anything, just feel free to unmute and say stuff, I guess. Or like I said earlier, for anyone who might have missed it, if you have questions to ask the contributors, you can also leave those questions in the chat. And then hopefully I will see them and be a good host and be able to read them out and have people answer. Okay, so I'll just start off with question one because this is my job, I guess. And I think a couple of you already kind of answered this question, but if you didn't, my first question was going to be what inspired you to write the story that you submitted to the anthology, or alternatively, where did your story idea kind of come from? If anyone wants to answer that. If no one wants to answer also, then we can all just we need to agree on like a hand sign, maybe like a giant X, and I'll just be like, cool, next one.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in if yeah. So my story, Lessons in Botany, is a um yeah, long COVID inspired like ME/CFS Rapunzel retelling, and it's kind of came from my absolute obsession with Tangled as a teenager. I At that time, so the main character in Lessons in Botany is both trans masc and chronically ill, and I really loved back then and still how Rapunzel kind of explores or lets you explore the theme of isolation. And back then I became really obsessed with it because I was a hopelessly closeted queer kid in a hopeless small town where I just saw no one liked me and I felt weird. I also didn't know I was autistic, so I felt weird and isolated, and it was really just this longing for actually to find home outside of where you're at. So I was very much caved into my room and watching the movie on repeat. And I did escape the tower back then, and then COVID and getting ME and all of that kind of brought me back to it, and I felt like I was just back where I used to be. And I realized once more that's like, with disability specifically, isolation, and specifically with the pandemic, isolation is such a like, that's the cure, that's the convenient thing, we're just like, yeah, we'll give you space, we'll let you rest, and we'll just forget about you. And I felt like that kind of just was exactly like such a similar experience again. So when I saw the call, I and saw fairy tales, I was like, wait a second, there's like such a connection to that. And then I really just wanted to explore this idea of how we went from we're all going to protect each other to just this very horrible well, immunocompromised people can stay in their tower, and that's the good for them, that's actually what doctors recommend. And so I did want to take out the anti-Semitism of the Rapunzel story, so I renamed the doctor. I renamed her Zucker, which is sugar in German, because I it felt like this whole, it's a sweet thing, it's a nice thing, but actually sugar is also like inflammatory, and I can't have sugar anymore because it does terrible things to my body. So it's just like, it feels sweet, but actually it's not. And it's this idea of like, yeah, no, the treatment is to lock you in a tower, and it's for your own good, and it's all good, and then we can forget about you. And I just wanted to challenge that, and that's kind of where that story came from, and why I really want to connect it also to the queer themes, because I just feel like there's such an overlay. And I don't want to spoil anything about the ending, but the ending was very much inspired by my lovely spouse, who's in the chat right now too, and the idea of like, hey, you know what, like if people were less, I'm not going to swear on this, but if people were nicer and actually consider that like we shouldn't choose between what's good for the illness and what's good for the person. We should instead be like, okay, you get to continue your life but also not die, so we're actually going to accommodate and like let you continue to be part of life. And if we had that mindset, there'd be a lot of ways that we could still be completely in the world, even if you are bedbound, even if you really can't, like, I mean, right now I'm barely sitting, so there's still options. And she had a lot of really beautiful ideas for that, and I just was like, okay, yeah, I'm stealing that, but I'm that's why the princess is inspired by her too, because like I yeah, so that's a little bit of love that got into the story added as well. Yeah, that's kind of the background. I hope that wasn't too long.
So I don't mind jumping in next. I saw Ella's call for this, and Ella and I were in a series of anthologies in the last couple of years together, and she knows that I am pretty much I was going to say famous, maybe not in a good way, for never paying attention to a word count. I've never met a word count I liked. Most of my stories come in, I try and write them to be short story length, and then I go, oh no, this is a novel. Um, so when I saw that Ella's call was 4,000 words, that was my jumping off point. And I was like, I'm going to see if I can do it. I want to see if I can be, concise. And I thought, what is the one story that has been in the backbone of my mind all this time? And it's Cinderella, because I think of all the fairy tales, there's a lot that people don't know to the extent that I have like researched them. I've been madly into fairy tales since I was a kid, and I've got books and books up behind on my desk, comparing the 5,000 versions of Cinderella that there are. But everybody knows the bones of it. So it's not like something like Rapunzel, where I like Tangled as a film. I don't like the cultural effect it's had that means that nobody knows the original story anymore. But Cinderella, I thought, okay, I can get away with, like, people know there's a fairy godmother, there's a pumpkin, there's midnight. And to take those and boil them down to something that let it be a character piece was really like kind of freeing. And I wrote the entire thing in, I think, 2.5 hours. So like, Ella, you broke me with this story. It's not normal. So yeah, it was a real sort of like, let's see if I can. And that was all the inspiration really was. So someone else's go.
I can hop in. I'm like always like, oh no, what if someone else talks at the same time and then I'm rude? So I'm like, I'll go right now. But I am a childhood cancer survivor. So my story was kind of based off of the idea of the what comes after. I'm like, the few disabled characters I have read, it's mostly about their diagnosis or maybe their treatment, because that's the most exciting part. And then nobody wants to write about the after because it's boring. And so I wanted to write kind of about survivorship. And I guess it's also a little bit of a coming of age, because I was just musing on this the other day. I went, when you become chronically ill as a child, your coming of age is actually going to your appointment for the first time and making your appointments alone without your parent. I was like, so it's kind of about my main character figuring out who she is as a person. All her life, people have told her what to do or what she wants because they want to, kind of similar to what Casper was saying, they want to protect. They want to care. Sometimes even in my story, it's even a well-meaning, but it's her kind of coming into herself and being like, okay, what do I actually want as an individual? And so it's kind of, I guess I thought of this the other day. I was like, oh, I guess it is kind of a coming of age. So that's kind of the inspiration behind my story.
Cool. Thank you everyone for all of the, like additional context. Like obviously as the compiler, and as contributors, we all have some idea of like what informed the stories that went into this anthology, but it's still really, really lovely to kind of get like more of the sort of granular details. I especially love, like those, I don't know, times in your life when you kind of are just like out and about, and you like see something in a museum or whatever, and like that kind of sticks with you. Um, I I can answer this question. I'm totally forgetting about myself. I'm like, I'll just ask the questions and all of that. I think my story was literally just me being like, oh my God, I'm so mad at the world right now. And like I'm so sick of being chronically ill. And like I think sometimes like when you're writing disability in fiction, you kind of have to be quite mindful of how you present it, right? Like if you present it as something that's like that feels like it's asking for pity or feels like it's just nothing but tragic, right? You kind of want to avoid that because those are quite stereotypical and like can be quite harmful narratives. So that's not what I was trying to do. Instead, I was like, I want to just have this character who like has gone through a similar experience to me. So like when I was 13, I got really, really sick with some mystery illness that went on for like months. And doctors were like, we think she has. We think she has this, that, the other. But then it was none of that. And it was just like, I'm dying, but not actually dying. And then that kind of left me with a compromised immune system that has just like flared up every now and again. And we still don't have answers. But like one of the other experiences of that is obviously like the people around me, like my parents and like my friends and all that. They obviously want to take care of you and want to know what's going on. Um, and we were just getting nowhere. And so I kind of thought, I don't know, maybe I can kind of present the fear that comes with like the beginning of a chronic illness and like the uncertainty and the not knowing what's wrong from a different perspective. So rather than it being told from, the disabled child's perspective, we're kind of getting it from the more so the parents who are kind of like, well, we need to cure her, we want to fix her, we want to get back to normal. That the whole phrasing of like get back to normal, obviously kind of being a call to, the language surrounding COVID at the moment, which is also kind of what informed my story, right? Because I was kind of like, man, wouldn't it be nice if people were just like willing to be accommodating and like I didn't have to constantly ask for accommodations? Because well, not obviously, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm someone who is like really afraid of conflict and I really hate being a burden. And a lot of the times I perceive myself to be a burden when I ask for accommodations. And so I was kind of channeling all of that um, into this story. And then I was like, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if just like this cool magical witch who was once beheaded in like medieval England, lived on a beach and like came and told the parents, like exactly what they needed to know to accommodate their child? Wouldn't that be miraculous? So that was my like inspiration slash like direction that I wanted to take. And I ended up writing it after I actually had everyone's stories because I was just really worried. I was like, oh my God, what if I write something and then like it doesn't, I don't even want to publish my own story in this. So I had to wait till I had all of the vibes of everyone's stories and then I could be like, okay, I feel pretty solid in what I want to do. So I think just for time. So we currently have about, I'm really bad at math, 17 minutes ish. So do we want to kind of start the discussion on like disability representation in fantasy, or would you guys prefer to kind of talk about the anthology specifically, or what do we want to do? I don't want to like be the steamroller and make everyone do stuff. I mean, I
I
am
think
the host.
either's probably good if you want to steamroll ahead.
Cool. I was gonna make a joke about how I'm the boss and I knew what I want and all that. So I guess like to because I feel like this discussion is like really, really important. And perfect. It looks like I have permission to steamroll, so we're gonna steamroll. Um, I think the discussion about disability representation in fantasy is like really, really important. And obviously this is like the reason this anthology sort of came into existence. So I think this is my preference. Sorry, I have like a really bad habit of putting on really stupid, horrible accents when I'm nervous. Okay. So the whole premise of the anthology was or the way that it came to be is basically someone on Twitter, multiple someone said that disability does not belong in fantasy. And I saw that and was like, that's silly. You shouldn't say things like that. And then went to my notes doc and typed out all my feelings. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say something publicly. I always lurk on Twitter, but I'm going to say something this time. So where am I going with this? I'm so sorry. I'm getting distracted. I guess my question is, why do you disagree with that statement? Disability does not belong in fantasy. Like, why do you think disability belongs in fantasy? And just for context, I'm not asking to be convinced, obviously, but I do feel like this kind of topic is like, I don't know, from a personal point of view, like when you hear that kind of opinion, you know, why do you disagree with that? How do you disagree with that, etc.? I don't know. Is this too big of a question? I'm just really interested.
I don't want to keep like going first, but I'm also happy to. So please, if someone else wants to, like, I'm also not planning to steamroll. But if I'm okay to be the choo-choo train here, then I'm gonna be pretentious for a moment because I just read something. Ta-Nehisi Coates in the message just wrote something really great about how storytelling and like our in general the stories we tell decide who gets to be human and who doesn't. And I feel like that is so at the crux of it because to me, like, yes, of course, with fantasy, with sci-fi, and with whatnot, yeah, of course, it would be better to always still have disabled people with us because otherwise we're getting into eugenics territory very fast. But even outside of all of that, we are in the present right now, and we are telling stories, and these stories show who is actually part of our canon and who isn't. And when we automatically assume that disabled people wouldn't be part of it, that just reflects everywhere where, you know, people assume like I have that constantly with masking and stuff where it's like, oh yeah, no, it makes sense, like to my partner too. Of course it makes sense that you would mask because you have an immunocompromised person with you, but like I don't have anyone around. And it's like, I'm sure you do. You just don't know. You just assume that we don't exist. And I feel like that's why representation is so important because it puts our humanity back into the canon. And that's what I really love. So, yeah.
Sorry, Natalie, I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear your audio. It was perfect before, but now it's not working.
Does it work now? I think Barry probably turned it off. He likes to wreck everything. So it's quite strange because I was having this like a similar discussion last night where a bunch of people they were basically saying that it made complete sense for Peter to not have his leg amputated in the movies because, and I'm quoting here, he would be useless. It would be too dark for a kids movie, like for PG-13, even though they're murdering, butchering kids all over the bloody screen. And also just like they were like, why would it go there? It's too dark.
I think your microphone dropped out again. I'm so sorry.
I'm not sure if there's no charge on it, maybe. That
It's
might be
working
it.
now.
When did I drop out?
Literally just like 2 seconds ago.
I'm gonna try with the laptop instead. It might not work also. Yeah, so basically just people were just saying that it would be useless and anyone that has a disability, like they just shouldn't be there. And that erasure, it makes me furious because like disabled people are still people and they're still should be allowed to exist and should be allowed to go on adventures and like do all the things other people do, because we still have dreams and like hopes and things that we long to do. And sometimes it's really difficult, but we can find ways to still do these things that have like a lot of meaning to us. So I think things like this anthology is just really important to show that it is possible, completely possible, to write brilliant stories with that disability rep, and that yeah, we deserve to be there as well, because we deserve to be in the real world. So it's sort of, people want to forget because it's difficult, and I get that. It's like things like death and cancer, not to talk about it, but it's here. We need to talk about it to sort of make sure that everyone sort of feels part of the society instead of just feeling like we're being shunted away and just stay out of sight, don't mention anything, and pretend that you're fine. Like it's yeah, it's similar. That's why I think people say, "Oh, but you look fine." I get that every single day. When I need to sit down in the train, stuff like that, it's just straight away people are like, "Oh, but you look fine, so why would you need anything?" Yeah, so it's just sort of, it's about, I think, instilling compassion in people and understanding that disabled people are just people like everyone else. And that's, I agree with Casper that it links very close to things like LGBTQ and other sort of marginalized identities. Yeah.
And to jump off of something that you just said then, Natalie, the instilling compassion in people, we're writing for like two audiences almost, aren't we? I know you oughtn't to read your own reviews, but looking at the reviews that we've already got for the anthology from the advanced copies, the number of people that have said that they felt so seen that they cried, or that they've been so touched. That's one of our audiences, to be able to recognize yourself on page. But I think also where I would like to see disability more normalized in fantasy fiction. So I think what we've got here is an incredibly powerful, incredibly important book. If that were to be normalized to the point where, off the top of my head, say, Peter was allowed to lose his leg, or in Game of Thrones, you would have like a decent depiction of somebody going about their life and incidentally being disabled or ill in some way. It's instilling that compassion in people that it might surprise, people who would read it not expecting that and then think, oh, they are just a normal person. I think that it's a really interesting balance between not to us and them, but writing lived experiences and also writing relatable experiences. It's a fun balance, I guess. Well, it's not fun in any sense of the word, but it's a nice balance that we can achieve.
I think people are often informed about things because of the media that they consume. And so if people are not getting disabled opinions from disabled people, they're just going to get opinions from other people who don't know what they're talking about. So I feel like it's important because, as to echo the words of others, I mean, we exist in real life, so why would we not exist in fiction? And it was really funny when I was, well, I guess not funny, but when I was reading the book, reading the anthology for the first time, I would read a story and I go, oh, that, and I mean, it's a disability in fantasy anthology, but every story I'd be like, oh, that's so cool, they're disabled. And then I just, it was cool to see, myself and others represented there. And usually, that's such a rare thing that I just get very excited. Not that I'm excited about someone being disabled, but I'm excited about seeing represented. And I'd read, and I'd come back to the story because I do something with my son. So I'd come back to the book and I go, oh, wow, that person. I went, oh, wait, that's the whole point of this book. But it was just ironic that I was so delighted and surprised that each story, I was like, oh, I relate to that. And was able to see that instead of just, maybe reading an entire anthology and there's one person who I kind of relate to, and that's like my favorite story, because I'm like, okay, I guess I have to pick this one. So it was just a neat experience to just read it from cover to cover.
I also would like to say a thing, and that is like, the sort of conversation, right, about how we're kind of writing for two audiences reminds me of a nonfiction book that I read last year, which is called How to Read Now by Elaine Castillo, I believe. And that book kind of goes into like the it's primarily talking about race, but Elaine, it feels weird to call her by her first name when we're not on that kind of like basis, but Elaine says that in talking about like stories that have sort of people of color as protagonists and written by people of color, for example, what who they are writing for is not okay, wait, let me start again. She kind of talks about this concept of like the expected reader, and the expected reader is the person who fits into the dominant hegemonic, sort of idea of a cis white straight male person or woman. I think like the readership has changed a lot nowadays. So like women are reading a lot more statistically, which is great. But there is still that kind of idea of like the dominant reader is the expected reader. So these expected readers are both people that when we write, we can basically expect to be read by them to some extent, but also the expected reader expects to be the audience that is catered to first and foremost, even if they don't necessarily realize it. And so I do really feel that pressure of like every time I write a story that features disability in some way, I'm like, this is not for you. This is for me, and this is for people like me. First and foremost, like I really am trying to push past my own internalized ableism and like unlearn some of that and learn to like value my perspective as a reader first before an able-bodied person's, because it's sort of like I don't even know what it's like to be able-bodied. So, like, but I've been conditioned to sort of think as if I am. I don't, it's like this weird thing. But I do find that to be like a complex topic of like, how do you balance writing a story that is like for you and for people like you, but also will be accepted by the general sort of expected reader? Because if you're not educating them about your disability or you're not giving them something fun to chew on, right, then it just becomes boring. Like some of the feedback I've gotten previously in the past for other stories is like, someone will be waiting for a migraine to pass or something like that. And able-bodied readers will say, I know there's multiple things happening, like the romance arc and, like the mystery is being solved or whatever, but it's a bit boring and slow. But disabled readers consistently will be like, that's my favorite part because that is a reality that I live. And like that difference in reception is always very interesting to me. But I really do feel like, having said all of that and rambled a bit, I think what everyone's stories in this anthology does is they all feel very distinct and they all feel very sort of realistic and like true to everyone. While at the same time, like I think one of the reviews was that they were genuinely surprised that like all of the characters are just normal people. Like they went in and didn't know what they were expecting would happen with like a book full of stories with disabled characters, but they got to the end and they were like, wow, these are just people who are going about their lives in different situations, and that was amazing. And I was like, this is what I want, is for you in general, the world you, to kind of realize that we're not aliens. Like, yeah, we do some things differently, but it's not like um I don't know, I don't even know how to finish that thought. To be honest, it's just it really the whole idea of the expected reader or like writing for multiple different audiences really strikes a chord in me, I think. We are running close to time, but are you guys happy to do one more question just to close out the meeting? Sweet. Okay. Um, Let me choose. I prepared like so many questions because I was like, what if we need a lot of questions and now I have to make a decision? Um, okay. The last question I think will be maybe I'll ask two and you guys can just choose which one you want to answer because I can't pick. So one option is, how do you balance the opportunities of writing fantasy with staying true to disability depiction? Or I'm curious to know what tropes or narratives you would like to see less of when it comes to disability representation in fantasy. Who wants to go first? Yeah, Casper. Just continue on theme. Me, Casper. There we go.
Sure. I mean, I had something to say to the previous thing still, but I let me let me move on to the new. Just really quickly, I just want to say, sorry, because what you said was super interesting, and I feel like as someone, you know, who has been trying to read much more intersectionally and diversely, I actually feel like the stories that are written specifically not for me, like Black stories, for example, that are not written with me in mind at all, have taught me much more than the ones that are more accessible to broader audience. So like that's part of the tightrope, I feel, because yes, you have to make it translatable, but also if you have people that don't have that experience but want to like learn, getting it from the inside view can be so valuable. So that let me get to your actual question. um Tropes I want to see less of. Like I feel like there's the very okay, actually one specifically I keep seeing in books, and it's so frustrating to me, which is when we have, especially with sick characters, like with I haven't seen enough disabled characters to actually know if this is also an issue, but which is a separate issue. But with sick characters, or like, you know, that are struggling with pain or an injury or something, it's always like, yeah, this, you have this, all these limitations until the action gets fast, until like something specific happens, and then we just have to put it aside for a moment, because obviously they're still a badass, and obviously like they can just put that aside, and then everything goes well again. And I've seen that in I think the worst times I've seen that is in romance, when it's being used as this like, oh my god, they stopped being disabled for a moment because they love the other person. And I hate it, because it's like, yeah, no, okay, I've had my spouse like in a actually nope, that's triggering, let me go in the flu, in a general flu, like in a terrible state, and be like, okay, I you should lock it up and make dinner, but I can't move, so, and you need to be fed, so you know what, I the best I can do is like ramble at you right now and try to keep you cohesive as you're making yourself food. Like I genuinely can't just put it aside out of love. And it's just it feeds this like really toxic thing that we can just push through, and that, you know, we are choosing to some level, like, yeah, you have to be disabled sometimes, but like not all the time. And it just it's just so toxic. So I'm ending this with an ugh. Good question though.
I'll go next if that's okay. Very similar to that, because I wasn't sure what to say, because again, I agree, it's so rare that we have disabled people in fantasy. So there's quite like they have to like magically they become better and stuff. And I understand that for some that's a fantasy, that you can fix everything.
Okay, I don't like jumping in when I can't see things. I don't know if Zoom is weird. But Natalie, your audio cut out a bit, so we didn't catch your whole answer.
I think like my whole stream thing is always cursed. I don't know when did I cut out?
So we kind of heard a bit about the um oh my goodness, now I'm totally blanking because I got
Did
really
you get to the heat? Yeah, did we get to healing magic? And like,
I heard you mention that, but not like the whole sentence. So do you want to go over it again?
the magic cure trope. Yeah, like Caitlin
Yeah.
just mentioned. And in general, I am not a fan of healing magic. I prefer when it's more realistic and there's like you don't just magically get better, like your broken bone is just perfectly fixed and then you can run again. It makes no sense to me, because it is very that goes into that whole let's just erase any disabilities and like scars and all that. And I think that's probably why a lot of like my characters, they go through horrendous things and they don't get better, but they find ways to live in joy with the new limitations they've sort of gained along the way. But yeah, I can't stand anything like healing magic and let's fix you, or even worse, I've read some books where like the characters like get a magical glow up because they weren't pretty enough, and I'm just oh yeah. So yeah, just healing magic in general is like it can be used well, but quite often it is just used to sort of fix it and make sure that nobody has any disabilities. Even though yeah, basically.
So I had to grab a pen then because this has just linked something for me. One of the coolest things that you can experiment with, this is going back to sort of question one really, the how do you balance the opportunities that fantasy gives you. Fantasy gives you the opportunity to explore things like healing magic in a negative way. And to sort of, if you're used to a narrative where you push through, where you manage in the action battle, you see the characters, not being disabled for a second. What does that cost them? Maybe they can do it with magic, but what does it cost after? And I think that's something I'd like to see lots more of is, I suppose aftercare is the wrong word, but it's something I explored in my Sleeping Beauty retelling that came out last year, that I started when she woke up and she had to reacclimatize because she's been in that bed for, 1,000 years. Her legs are not in the state that, you can't magically wake up and be fine. You have to look at, if you want it to be interesting, I think you have to look at what magic can do, but what magic can't do is more important, right? For disability. So I've just scribbled like a whole page of notes for a new story. So thank you, Casper and Natalie.
I think for me, it was really important in my writing that I wanted to explore disability, but I didn't want that to be the whole story. Like, obviously, there are some very powerful stories about disability, and that's fine. I'm not saying anything against that. But for me personally, I was like, disability is a part of me. It's a part of my life, but it's not the only thing in my life. So it was really important, even when I was writing this story, that I'm like, it obviously is part of the story. It's my main character, Mina. It's part of her life, but I didn't want it to be the only thing. Like, it was also important that her relationships with her grandmother, her relationship with her friend. I was like, so I think for me, the balance is I want to have a character who's disabled, but it's also just one part of who they are. Obviously, it influences what they're able to do or what accommodations they need, but it's not like their only thing. Like, you're not like, oh, that's the disabled character that she always writes. It's like, no, that's just the character. That's just who they are, and they're doing their thing, and sometimes they might have trouble doing their thing, but they find a way to do the thing, or they don't, or they rest and don't do the thing. But either way, it's just a part of their story, and it's not the all-encompassing story for me personally.
I love everyone's answers to everything ever. And I just want to add, like, I'm really glad that the whole sort of overcoming narrative came up because that is genuinely my biggest pet peeve with disability stories is the I don't know, I guess like the incidental nature of disability that people write sometimes, but not in the sense of like this is just a part of who the person is, but rather, oh yeah, they have it, but not in moments of action when it would really flare up and stop them from being a badass or like whatever. Um, okay, so one time, let me over contextualize this. I have written an essay for Geek Dis, or I forget, Heather changed the name to their website, which I can also link in the freebie documents and stuff to go check out their blog because it is all about showcasing sort of like disabled and neurodivergent stories and other books as well. But I wrote an essay for Heather for her blog because she does a sort of month of disability essays. And that's where I was talking about something that I started calling toxic perseverance, which is this concept of when a disabled character just keeps going and pushes and pushes and pushes. and like essentially acts able-bodied. Um, and realistically, I think everyone here knows that when you do that, it comes at a cost, right? Like you can end up further disabled, you can end up making yourself sick, you can injure yourself irreparably, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a great way to approach life, but it is unfortunately one of those things that able-bodied people seem to think is fine. And so in that essay, I sort of talk about the concept of toxic perseverance and what is the difference sort of between perseverance in general and like what makes it toxic. So one of the book that I read for that essay was Fourth Wing. If you liked it, I'm genuinely really happy for you. Just want to put that out there. But when I read that, I was like, this book for me falls into this trap of the toxic perseverance thing because we are seeing the main character push through all of these things and get injured even, and then push through the injury further and then not see any consequences of that pushing through. And I felt like, just as a reader who has the same disability as the protagonist, I was like, oh, that's so disappointing. Like I wanted to, see myself. I wanted to see the realities, I guess. And so that was sort of my awakening moment of like, wow, you know what? I actually do have something I hate about disability rep sometimes, and it is that pushing through because I'm like, I cannot push through. And then I can't see myself in this world anymore because if that's the expectation, I just would never be able to live up to that. Um, so that is also my answer to the trope I want to see less of. And I really love, Adie, that you brought up like the sort of question of um, like the whole magic healing. I think all of this links. You guys are so clever linking all of these things. The sort of magic healing trope and like, okay, maybe you can be healed, but what is the consequence of that? Maybe you can be healed in the moment, but what is the consequence of that? And also, I think the magical healing trope for me often misses the fact that just because you heal the injury or the disability doesn't mean you've healed the trauma that you got from becoming injured or disabled in the first place. And I find that that's a real shame because things like PTSD and complex PTSD are often, to me, overlooked. And okay, so it turns out I have a lot of pet peeves in fantasy, and that is the use of trauma as sort of like, oh, this is why the bad guy is so broody, right? Because he had a bad childhood. And it's like, okay, but that would affect him day to day, but it doesn't. It just makes him grumpy to everyone except her. And I'm like, please, I want more compassion. Like, I want a deeper sort of exploration of how that would inform him as a human being. Um, anyway, I will cut myself off at two things, two pet peeves, I think. Otherwise, I could probably just go on forever. But this has been such a wonderful, lovely chat, and I'm so glad that we were all able to jump on at the same time and have this talk. I've also, just personally speaking, learned a lot about hosting a live stream and about time management even. I think it would be so lovely if we could do this sort of again in the future and have maybe a longer, more focused discussion, even if everyone is sort of up for that, but we don't need to make any decisions right now. Um, I don't really know how to close this out other than just repeatedly saying thank you. Does anyone have any sort of closing thoughts or anything to add or anything like that before we say goodbye?
Only that we love you, and this was such a good project to be involved in.
Yes, and I'm super excited to see what you'll do in the future and what all of us will do in the future because I feel like there's going to be a lot more great stories. And also, yeah, thank you everyone who joined us because this was a really lovely conversation.
Also, I would just like to say I love you all as well. And I want to add that we do have a second stream if anyone is going to be awake in, I think, what is it, 10 hours maybe? So that will be 9 a.m. for me. So I'll be freshly slept and awaked again. I know how to talk. Um, but if anyone wants to join the second stream, you will have the opportunity to again meet some of the other contributors, and I'm sure it's going to be just as fun as this one. This was really lovely, and I'm really glad we got some people to come and listen to us yap and ramble. Everyone is so lovely and clever, and I just want to say thank you again. forever. Every time you see me, it'll just be like, thank you. Okay, I don't really know how to say goodbye, but I will also do the heart thing and I'll give people a couple minutes to feel the love, or like 60 seconds, guys, to feel all of the love, and then it's disappearing. Okay, is this where we say goodbye?